The night air settles softly over the Nile. Far from the noise of modern life, far from bright streets and restless machines, the river moves through the darkness exactly as it has for thousands of years. Its water glides past sleeping villages. Reeds whisper along the shore. Somewhere in the distance, a small boat rocks gently against a wooden post. The stars above ancient Egypt shine with a steady and familiar light. Most homes are already quiet. The cooking fires have burned low. Clay ovens still hold traces of warmth from the bread baked earlier in the day. The narrow lanes between mud brick houses sit empty beneath the moonlight. Sand rests undisturbed on the pathways where hundreds of feet passed only hours before. Inside the homes, families sleep close together. A father rests after a long day in the fields. A mother sleeps beside children who will soon wake before sunrise. An elderly grandparent shifts quietly on a woven mat. The room is dark except for the fading glow of a small oil lamp. Outside, the Nile continues its endless journey. And tonight, as we drift into the quiet world of ancient Egypt, we will spend our time not with kings or generals, but with children. Children who rarely appear in monuments. Children whose names were often never written down. Children whose lives unfolded in small homes beside fields, workshops, riverbanks, and dusty roads. When many people imagine childhood today, they think of affection, encouragement, and careful attention. They imagine childhood as a special stage of life. But in much of the ancient world, childhood was often viewed differently. Children were important. Children were necessary. Children were expected. Yet they were not always treated as individuals whose feelings and dreams needed constant attention. Instead, childhood was something to be managed. A period to guide. A stage to survive. A time that prepared a young person for work, duty, and adulthood. This did not mean families lacked affection. Parents certainly loved their children. Many mothers worried over sickness. Many fathers felt pride when a child learned a skill. Families mourned deeply when children died. And sadly, many children did die young. But daily life left little room for the kind of childhood many people imagine today. Ancient Egypt was a world of labor. The river gave life, but life demanded effort in return. Fields needed planting. Canals needed clearing. Fishing nets needed repair. Animals needed feeding. Bread needed baking. Water needed carrying. Every day brought another list of tasks. Every season brought another cycle of work. In such a world, children slowly entered the rhythm of labor from an early age. The process often began so gradually that no one thought much about it. A very young child might first watch. They sat near adults while bread dough was kneaded. They watched reeds being woven into baskets. They followed older siblings through the village. They observed fishing boats moving along the river. At first, these were simply sights and sounds surrounding daily life. The smell of wet clay. The sound of grain grinding. The scrape of sandals against stone. The creaking of wooden tools. The distant voices of merchants calling to one another. The child absorbed everything. The ancient world itself became their classroom. As years passed, observation slowly turned into participation. A child handed tools to an older worker. A child carried small bundles. A child gathered reeds or fetched water. No grand ceremony marked this transition. No one announced that childhood had ended. Responsibilities simply arrived little by little. Like the rising Nile, they appeared gradually. In many homes, mornings began before sunrise. The darkness would still cover the village when adults stirred from sleep. The air felt cooler then. For a brief time before the heat arrived, the world seemed calm and gentle. Someone lit a lamp. Someone stepped outside. Someone prepared grain for the morning meal. Children often woke alongside the adults. Not because anyone wished to interrupt their sleep, but because the household itself was already awake. The day had begun. The rhythm of the home pulled everyone into motion. In small farming communities, children learned quickly that time mattered. The Nile controlled much of life. Its floods shaped the seasons. Its waters determined harvests. Its behavior influenced entire communities. Adults paid close attention to these patterns. Children learned them as naturally as they learned language. The river became part of their understanding of the world. Many children spent long hours outdoors. The Egyptian sun was powerful. By midday, heat settled heavily across the landscape. Dust clung to feet and clothing. Shadows became precious. People sought relief beneath trees, beside walls, or near water. Children experienced the same environment every day. They learned where shade could be found. They learned how heat affected work. They learned when to move quickly and when to conserve energy. The physical world taught lessons constantly. Inside homes, mothers carried enormous responsibilities. Food preparation alone consumed large portions of each day. Grain had to be ground. Dough had to be prepared. Bread had to be baked. Water had to be carried. Clothing required maintenance. Children often remained nearby during these tasks. A young child might sit quietly watching. An older child might help. The work itself became a form of education. Skills passed from one generation to the next not through formal lessons but through repetition. Through observation. Through daily participation. Again and again. Day after day. Year after year. Many girls spent considerable time learning household responsibilities. Not because childhood was considered unimportant, but because survival depended upon competence. Every family needed capable members. Knowledge could not remain with only one person. A daughter learned because someday she would manage similar responsibilities herself. A son learned because he too would eventually contribute to a household. Life demanded preparation. And childhood served that purpose. The ancient Egyptians certainly recognized children as distinct from adults. Artwork often shows children differently. They wore different clothing. Their hairstyles sometimes differed. Their bodies were depicted according to artistic traditions that separated them from grown people. Yet despite these distinctions, childhood remained closely connected to adulthood. The boundary between the two was not as wide as many might imagine. Children lived among adult concerns. They witnessed labor. They witnessed illness. They witnessed shortages and hardships. They saw arguments. They saw exhaustion. They saw grief. The realities of life were not hidden away. They existed openly within the community. As the first light of dawn spread across the Nile Valley, villages slowly came alive. Birds called from reeds. Donkeys shifted in their pens. Workers gathered tools. The smell of baking bread drifted through narrow streets. Children moved through this awakening world alongside everyone else. A young boy might follow his father toward the fields. A young girl might help prepare food. Another child might accompany relatives to market. Each day carried familiar routines. Each routine quietly shaped expectations. And over time, those expectations became part of a child's identity. Many children likely found moments of joy within these routines. They played games. They chased one another through dusty lanes. They laughed with siblings. They splashed near the river. They invented small entertainments using simple objects. Childhood was not joyless. But play often existed between responsibilities rather than replacing them. Free time appeared in small pockets. A break beneath a tree. An afternoon after chores. A gathering of friends near the water. Life flowed between work and play rather than separating the two completely. The sounds of ancient Egypt reflected this reality. Listen carefully. A hammer strikes wood in a workshop. Stone scrapes against stone. A merchant speaks with a customer. Goats call from nearby pens. Water splashes into clay jars. Children's voices drift through the air. All these sounds blend together beneath the bright sky. The village breathes as a single living thing. Everyone contributes. Even the youngest members gradually find their place. And perhaps that is one reason childhood was managed so carefully. Communities depended upon continuity. Skills had to survive. Knowledge had to survive. Families had to survive. The future rested upon children becoming capable adults. That expectation shaped nearly every aspect of their lives. As morning grows brighter, the Nile reflects the rising sun. Workers move toward their tasks. Children follow familiar paths. Another day begins in ancient Egypt. Another day of learning through observation. Another day of quiet responsibilities. Another day in a world where childhood was woven directly into the fabric of daily life. The river flows onward. The reeds sway gently. And beneath the growing warmth of the Egyptian sun, countless children continue their slow journey toward adulthood, guided less by celebration and more by routine, necessity, and the steady rhythm of the ancient world. As the morning sun climbs higher above the Nile, the coolness of dawn begins to fade. The shadows shorten little by little. Light settles across the fields. The river glimmers beneath the bright sky. Farmers move steadily through their work, and the sounds of the village become more familiar and constant. Children are already part of the day's rhythm. Some walk beside parents. Some remain near home. Others move through workshops, storehouses, gardens, and courtyards where daily life unfolds. No one speaks of training in the modern sense. No one gathers children into classrooms to explain the meaning of responsibility. Instead, responsibility appears naturally. It arrives through repetition. A child watches something done once. Then twice. Then 100 times. Eventually the child begins doing it too. The process is so gradual that it often goes unnoticed. A small hand carries a bundle of reeds. A young voice calls after a wandering goat. A child balances a clay jar with careful concentration. Tiny tasks slowly become larger ones. The ancient world rarely paused to separate learning from living. They were often the same thing. In a farming village, nearly everything depended on cooperation. The fields stretched outward beyond the homes. Green growth lined parts of the Nile while beyond them lay stretches of dry earth and desert. The contrast was striking. Life and dryness existed side by side. Every harvest mattered. Every season mattered. The work of many hands created food for the entire community. Children understood this long before they could explain it. They saw adults working. They saw grain being collected. They saw storage jars filled. They saw anxiety during poor seasons. And they saw relief during good ones. These observations became part of their understanding of the world. The lesson was simple. Food did not appear by itself. Comfort did not appear by itself. Everything required effort. In many homes, meals remained modest. Bread formed the center of daily eating. It appeared morning after morning, day after day. Its smell filled houses and courtyards. Grinding grain demanded tremendous labor. The work could be repetitive and exhausting. Children often grew up watching this process. The sound of stone grinding grain became as familiar as birdsong. It was part of daily existence. A young girl sitting nearby might eventually begin helping. At first she simply watched. Then she participated for short periods. Over time, her skill improved. The movements became familiar. The work became routine. Much of childhood unfolded this way. Knowledge entered slowly, like water soaking into dry soil. There were also children whose lives followed different paths. Some families possessed greater resources. Some fathers worked as scribes. Some served temples. Some held positions within government administration. In these households, childhood could include opportunities unavailable to many others. A boy being trained as a scribe lived in a world shaped by writing. Writing was powerful. Writing preserved information. Writing connected generations. Writing helped manage taxes, records, trade, and government affairs. The ability to read and write opened doors. Yet even here, childhood was often structured around preparation. A future scribe spent long hours practicing symbols. Mistakes were corrected. Exercises repeated. Lessons memorized. Patience was required. Discipline was required. The work demanded focus. Many students probably found certain lessons difficult. The ancient Egyptian writing system was not simple. Its signs carried meaning, sound, and tradition. Learning them took years. A child training as a scribe spent countless hours seated on the ground, carefully copying symbols while heat pressed against the walls outside. The room might be quiet except for scratching reeds and occasional instructions from a teacher. Dust floated through sunlight. Time passed slowly. The future was being shaped one symbol at a time. Meanwhile, elsewhere along the Nile, another child learned very different lessons. A fisherman's son might wake before dawn. The river would still be wrapped in darkness. Mist could linger above the water. The boat rocked gently. The air smelled of wet reeds and river mud. Together with older relatives, he would move onto the water. The Nile was calm at this hour. The world felt suspended between night and morning. Fishing required patience. The river never rushed. Neither did the people who depended upon it. Nets had to be checked. Equipment had to be maintained. Weather had to be observed. Knowledge accumulated across generations. Parents passed this knowledge to children because survival depended upon it. Not because they wished to burden them. Because the river demanded understanding. Every occupation carried its own lessons. A builder learned stone. A merchant learned exchange. A potter learned clay. A baker learned timing and heat. Children entered these worlds gradually. By adulthood, many had already spent years absorbing the knowledge surrounding them. This process shaped family relationships. Parents certainly provided care. They provided food when possible. Protection when possible. Guidance when possible. But daily life left little room for constant emotional attention. The demands of survival remained ever present. Imagine a mother in a modest village home. The day is already warm. She kneads dough while watching a small child nearby. Another child carries water. A third helps prepare fuel for cooking. The tasks never fully disappear. When one task ends, another arrives. She may love her children deeply. She may worry whenever illness appears. She may feel pride watching them grow. Yet much of her attention must remain fixed on practical concerns. Bread must be finished. Water must be available. The household must function. Love exists. But duty occupies much of the day. The same could be said for fathers. Many men spent long hours away from home. Fields, workshops, riverboats, and construction sites demanded labor. Physical exhaustion was common. By evening, muscles ached. Skin carried dust and sweat. The day's heat lingered in the body. When fathers returned home, they often returned tired. Their responsibilities continued the next morning. Children saw this weariness. They grew up understanding that adulthood involved labor. The lesson required no explanation. Life itself demonstrated it. Ancient childhood also existed beneath the constant presence of uncertainty. Modern medicine did not exist. Illness remained a familiar visitor. A fever could arrive unexpectedly. An infection could become dangerous. A small injury sometimes led to serious consequences. Parents understood these risks. Children understood them too. The fragility of life was visible. It appeared in conversations. It appeared in family memories. It appeared in community experiences. Many families knew loss. This reality shaped attitudes toward childhood in subtle ways. People hoped children would grow strong. They prayed for health. They sought protection from disease. Yet they also lived with uncertainty. The future could never be guaranteed. As midday approaches, heat settles heavily over the land. The brightness becomes intense. The air seems to shimmer above the ground. Workers search for moments of relief. Shade becomes precious. Trees gather small clusters of resting people beneath their branches. Children sit nearby. Some drink water. Some share simple food. Others listen quietly while adults talk. The pace slows. For a short time, the world seems almost still. The Nile continues moving. A breeze stirs the reeds. Far away, birds circle above the water. Then gradually the work resumes. The day continues. And childhood continues with it. Many children likely spent much of their lives in the company of siblings. Large families were common. Brothers and sisters shared sleeping spaces. Shared meals. Shared responsibilities. Older siblings often helped care for younger ones. This created another layer of learning. A child was not guided only by parents. They learned from brothers. They learned from sisters. They learned from cousins. Knowledge flowed through the entire family. In the evenings, after the heat began to soften, communities settled into a gentler rhythm. The sun drifted lower. Golden light touched mud brick walls. Long shadows stretched across dusty roads. Animals returned. Workers finished their tasks. Children moved back toward home. The village slowly gathered itself together once again. Cooking fires appeared. The smell of bread returned. Voices carried through the warm air. This was often the closest thing to rest. Not complete rest, but a slowing of movement. A pause within the endless cycle of work. Children experienced these evenings alongside everyone else. They listened to conversations. They observed adult concerns. They absorbed stories and advice. Perhaps they sat quietly while relatives discussed harvests, trade, weather, or family matters. The boundaries between generations remained less rigid than many people might expect. Children lived among adults. Adult life surrounded them constantly. As darkness approached, oil lamps flickered to life. Small flames pushed back the night. The Nile reflected distant stars. Cooler air slowly returned. Families prepared sleeping spaces. The noise of the village softened. One by one, voices faded. One by one, lamps went dark. Children lay down beside parents, siblings, or grandparents. The ceiling above them remained simple. The room remained modest. Yet it offered shelter. Outside, the ancient world rested. Tomorrow would bring another sunrise. Another cycle of labor. Another collection of ordinary moments. And somewhere in the darkness, thousands of children drifted toward sleep. Not isolated from the adult world. Not protected from every hardship. But growing within the steady routines that surrounded them. Childhood continued quietly. Managed through habit. Guided through example. Shaped by work, family, and necessity. And beneath the endless stars above the Nile, another generation slowly learned how to become the adults their world required. Night settles fully over the Nile Valley. The last traces of daylight disappear beyond the western horizon. The river becomes a dark ribbon flowing silently through the landscape. Reeds bend gently in the evening breeze. Somewhere along the shore, water laps softly against a small fishing boat left to rest until morning. Most of the village is asleep now. The workshops are quiet. The fields are empty. The ovens have cooled. Only a few lamps remain lit behind small openings in mud brick walls. Inside one of these homes, a child shifts slightly on a woven mat. Perhaps the day was long. Perhaps tired muscles still remember hours spent walking, carrying, helping, watching, and learning. The child drifts deeper into sleep. Tomorrow will be much like today. And that predictability is one of the most important parts of childhood in ancient Egypt. Routine shaped nearly everything. The same river. The same fields. The same roads. The same tasks. The same familiar faces. Life moved slowly enough that children could absorb their surroundings over many years. Knowledge settled into the mind through repetition rather than instruction. Every season repeated patterns that had existed long before the child was born. The flooding of the Nile. The planting of crops. The harvesting of grain. The repairing of tools. The preparation of food. The maintenance of homes. The cycle continued again and again. Children grew up inside this rhythm. A young boy might not understand every detail of farming when he was 5 years old. But by the time he reached adolescence, thousands of observations had quietly accumulated. He had watched workers preparing fields. He had watched irrigation channels being cleared. He had watched grain stored in large containers. He had watched adults discuss weather and water levels. Without realizing it, he was building knowledge year after year. The same was true for girls learning household management. A very young child might simply sit beside her mother while bread was prepared. The smell of fresh dough would fill the room. Warm air would drip from the oven. Flour dust might cling to hands and clothing. The child would observe without fully understanding. But the process repeated so often that each step became familiar. Eventually she knew what came next before anyone spoke. The mixing. The kneading. The shaping. The baking. The storing. The rhythm became part of her memory. Childhood was often less about direct teaching and more about constant exposure. Life itself became the lesson. As the seasons passed, children also learned something else. They learned patience. Ancient Egypt was not a world built around speed. Travel took time. Construction took time. Farming took time. Growth took time. The Nile itself moved at its own pace. People adjusted to these realities. Children did too. Many tasks required steady effort rather than quick results. A farmer could not rush a crop. A potter could not rush drying clay. A fisherman could not command a river to provide fish. The natural world set the schedule. Children grew up understanding this relationship. They watched adults wait. They watched adults endure. They watched adults continue working even when progress seemed slow. Patience became woven into everyday life. Morning after morning, children woke to familiar sounds. The scrape of sandals on packed earth. The distant call of animals. The crackle of cooking fires. The voices of adults already beginning their work. These sounds created a sense of order. The village itself felt predictable. A child knew where people would be. Knew where work would happen. Knew how the day would unfold. There was comfort in this familiarity. Even when life was difficult. Even when resources were limited. The routine itself provided stability. In larger towns and cities, childhood could look somewhat different. The world felt busier. More crowded. More complicated. Merchants arrived from distant places. Goods moved through markets. Temples attracted workers, priests, and visitors. Government officials managed records and administration. Yet even here, children were expected to prepare for adulthood. A merchant's child learned commerce. A craftsman's child learned a trade. A scribe's child learned writing. The details varied. The expectation remained. Childhood existed within the larger needs of society. The ancient Egyptians placed great value on order. Order in nature. Order in society. Order within the family. This idea influenced how children were raised. Obedience was important. Respect was important. Learning proper behavior was important. Not because adults wished to control every aspect of childhood, but because social stability depended upon people understanding their roles. A child who learned responsibility early would eventually contribute to the family and community. That belief appeared throughout daily life. It shaped expectations quietly. Often without discussion. The lessons could be simple. Speak respectfully. Complete assigned tasks. Pay attention. Observe carefully. Learn from those who know more. These expectations surrounded children constantly. Many ancient texts that survive today reveal advice given to younger generations. Some encourage diligence. Some praise education. Some warn against laziness. These teachings offer small glimpses into how adults viewed childhood. Not as a period separate from the future, but as preparation for it. The child was becoming something. A worker. A parent. A craftsperson. A scribe. A farmer. An adult member of society. The transformation happened slowly. So slowly that few people likely noticed it day by day. One season passed. Then another. The child grew taller. Stronger. More capable. Responsibilities increased naturally. No dramatic announcement was necessary. The change unfolded through daily life. As afternoon heat settles over the land once more, imagine a group of children gathered beneath a tree. The shade offers relief from the sun. Dust hangs lightly in the air. Nearby, adults continue working. The children talk quietly among themselves. Perhaps they play a simple game. Perhaps they share stories. Perhaps they simply rest. These moments mattered. Childhood was not entirely defined by labor. Friendships existed. Curiosity existed. Imagination existed. Children have always found ways to create small worlds of their own. Even within demanding societies. A stick becomes a toy. A smooth stone becomes part of a game. A patch of shade becomes a gathering place. The details change across history. The instinct remains. Children continue being children. Yet even during play, the adult world remained close. Work was visible. Responsibilities waited nearby. The separation between childhood and adulthood remained narrow. In many ways, children spent years standing near the edge of adult life, slowly moving closer to it. As evening approaches once again, the village begins to change. The sunlight softens. The heat loosens its grip. People return from fields and workshops. Dust rises beneath tired feet. The smell of cooking fills the air. Families gather near their homes. Children carry small items. Fetch water. Assist with final tasks before night. The day winds down. But even these evening routines teach valuable lessons. Children learn how households function. They learn cooperation. They learn timing. They learn what must be done before darkness arrives. Every activity carries practical knowledge. Every repetition strengthens memory. Inside one home, a grandmother speaks quietly while preparing food. Children listen. Perhaps she tells a familiar story. Perhaps she shares advice. Perhaps she simply talks about ordinary events from years past. The younger members of the family absorb these conversations. Not every lesson arrives through instruction. Sometimes wisdom enters through listening. Ancient societies relied heavily upon memory. Much knowledge passed from person to person rather than through written records. Stories carried information. Conversations carried information. Observation carried information. Children learned to pay attention. The skill served them throughout life. As darkness settles across the Nile Valley once more, lamps flicker softly in homes scattered along the river. The water reflects points of light. A gentle breeze drifts through reeds. The sounds of work disappear one by one. A fisherman secures his boat. A farmer closes a gate. A baker finishes the final task of the day. Children prepare for sleep. Some are already asleep. Others fight tiredness for a little while longer. The village grows quieter. Above, countless stars fill the sky. The same stars seen by generations before them. The same stars that watched over countless childhoods. Childhoods shaped by routine. Childhoods shaped by necessity. Childhoods filled with small duties, small joys, familiar places, and familiar faces. No grand ceremonies mark these ordinary evenings. Yet they form the foundation of an entire society. Because tomorrow, when the first light touches the Nile once again, another day of learning will begin. Not in a classroom. Not through formal lessons. But through the simple repetition of life itself. And in the quiet spaces between work and rest, another generation of children will continue their slow journey toward adulthood beneath the warm Egyptian sun and the steady flow of the ancient river. Before the first hint of dawn appears above the eastern horizon, the Nile Valley rests in a rare moment of stillness. The darkness feels deep and gentle. A cool breeze drifts across the water. Reeds sway softly near the riverbanks. Small boats float quietly against their moorings. The stars shine above the desert, bright and steady, untouched by any distant city lights. Inside the villages scattered along the Nile, families sleep close together. The mud brick walls hold the night's remaining coolness. Woven mats cover the floors. A few clay jars stand silently in corners. Tools rest where they were placed the evening before. Children sleep among parents, brothers, sisters, and grandparents. For a little while longer, responsibilities are forgotten. The fields are silent. The workshops are silent. The ovens are silent. Only the river continues its endless movement through the darkness. Then slowly, almost unnoticed, the ancient world begins to wake. A bird calls from somewhere near the water. A donkey shifts in its sleep. A lamp flickers to life inside a small home. Another day has arrived. For many children, the first lesson of life was not taught through words. It was taught through rhythm. The rhythm of waking. The rhythm of eating. The rhythm of labor. The rhythm of rest. Day after day, year after year, these patterns shape the mind. Modern life often separates activities into neat categories. Work belongs here. Learning belongs there. Childhood belongs somewhere else. Ancient Egypt rarely made such distinctions. Everything blended together. A child learned while working. Worked while observing. Observed while playing. The boundaries were soft. The experiences overlapped. And because of this, childhood unfolded differently than many people might expect. As dawn spreads across the valley, a pale golden light touches the fields. Mist lingers low above the river. The air feels fresh. For a brief moment, before the heat arrives, the world seems almost peaceful enough to stop time itself. A young boy steps outside his family's home. His feet touch cool earth. The village is already stirring. Adults move quietly through familiar routines. Someone carries water. Someone tends a small fire. Someone prepares food. The child watches. He has seen these scenes thousands of times. They are as familiar as the sound of his own breathing. And familiarity creates expectation. Without being told, he knows what the morning requires. Ancient childhood was filled with these silent understandings. Knowledge often existed without formal explanation. A child simply knew. Knew where tools belonged. Knew when animals needed attention. Knew which paths led to fields. Knew which chores belonged to whom. The village itself acted almost like a living guide. Its routines directed behavior. Its customs shaped habits. Its expectations formed character. As the sun rises higher, warmth spreads across the landscape. Workers head toward fields beyond the village. Children accompany them. Some carry small baskets. Some walk empty-handed. Others simply observe. The journey itself becomes a lesson. Along dusty paths, children hear conversations between adults. Discussions about crops. About weather. About river levels. About repairs needed before the next season. The child may not fully understand every detail. That hardly matters. The information settles quietly into memory. Years later, much of it will return. This gradual accumulation of knowledge is one reason childhood could be managed rather than constantly directed. Adults trusted repetition. Trusted experience. Trusted observation. The world itself was expected to teach. And often it did. The Nile was perhaps the greatest teacher of all. Every child grew up beside it. Its presence touched nearly every aspect of life. Its annual floods transformed the landscape. Its waters nourished crops. Its fish provided food. Its currents carried boats. The river shaped entire communities. Children watched its changing moods from their earliest years. During flood seasons, they observed rising waters spreading across the land. During calmer times, they watched boats travel between settlements. The river became part of their understanding of existence itself. Many children likely spent countless hours near its shores. Not always working. Sometimes simply watching. Watching fishermen repair nets. Watching merchants unload goods. Watching birds skim across the water. Watching sunlight dance on gentle waves. The Nile rewarded patience. There was always something to observe. Always something moving. Always something changing. Meanwhile, back in the villages, household life continued. A young girl sits beside her mother while vegetables are prepared. The room smells faintly of grain and baked bread. Light enters through a small opening. Dust drifts through a narrow beam of sunlight. The work proceeds slowly. Methodically. The mother speaks occasionally. Perhaps offering advice. Perhaps discussing ordinary matters. Perhaps saying very little at all. Silence was not unusual. Many tasks required concentration. Many tasks had been performed so many times that words became unnecessary. The child learns through presence. Simply by being there. Simply by watching. Simply by helping. This form of learning appears repeatedly throughout ancient childhood. Knowledge traveled through shared experience. Not through lectures. Not through manuals. But through daily life itself. As children grew older, expectations expanded. The change was gradual enough that it rarely felt sudden. A task that once belonged to an adult might eventually belong to the child. A responsibility once supervised closely might eventually be performed alone. Trust developed slowly. Competence developed slowly. Both emerged through repetition. The process resembled the growth of a tree. Almost invisible from one day to the next. Yet unmistakable over time. For boys entering adolescence, physical labor often increased. Stronger bodies could carry heavier loads. Longer hours became possible. New skills were introduced. The transition toward adulthood accelerated. For girls, household responsibilities frequently expanded in similar ways. More complex tasks appeared. More trust was granted. More was expected. Again, no dramatic ceremony marked these changes for most families. Life simply continued. And within that continuation, childhood slowly transformed. The ancient world placed enormous value on usefulness. This was not cruelty. It was practicality. Communities survived because people contributed. Every pair of hands mattered. Every skill mattered. Every worker mattered. Children understood this reality from an early age. The expectation was rarely hidden. One day they too would help support the family. One day they too would carry responsibilities. One day they too would become adults. The path ahead felt clear. As afternoon heat settles heavily over the Nile Valley, the landscape grows quieter. Movement slows. Workers seek shade. Animals rest. Even the air seems thicker. Children feel the heat just as adults do. Sweat gathers. Dust clings to skin. The sun presses down from above. These physical experiences become part of childhood memory. Ancient childhood was deeply connected to the environment. The weather shaped daily schedules. The river shaped opportunities. The land shaped expectations. Nature remained close at all times. there was little separation between people and their surroundings. As the day progresses, a young child follows an older sibling through the village. This relationship is important. Much learning happens between children themselves. Older brothers teach younger brothers. Older sisters teach younger sisters. Knowledge flows through the family in many directions. Parents are not the only teachers. The household functions as a network of guidance. Every member contributes. An older child demonstrates how to carry water, how to avoid breaking a clay vessel, how to approach an animal safely, how to complete a simple task. These small lessons occur constantly. Most are forgotten almost immediately. Yet together they shape a person's entire understanding of the world. By evening, the heat finally begins to fade. Long shadows stretch across dusty roads. The Nile reflects golden light. Workers return home. Voices drip through the air. Cooking fires appear once more. The village breathes out after another day of effort. Children move among adults carrying out final tasks. Fetching items. Helping prepare meals. Watching conversations unfold. Listening to stories. Absorbing customs. The evening is one of the richest classrooms in ancient life. Here, generations gather together. Experiences are shared. Memories are preserved. Advice passes quietly from old to young. No one announces that learning is taking place. Yet learning happens everywhere. As darkness slowly settles over the valley, the stars begin to appear one by one. Families finish their meals. The sounds of work disappear. A cooler breeze moves through the village. Some children are already struggling to keep their eyes open. Others remain awake, listening to the voices around them. Perhaps a grandparent recalls events from long ago. Perhaps neighbors discuss harvests. Perhaps stories are told beneath the stars. The child listens. And through listening, becomes connected to something larger than themselves. A family. A village. A tradition. A way of life stretching backward through countless generations. Eventually the conversations fade. Lamps grow dim. One by one, households prepare for sleep. The village becomes quiet again. The Nile continues its patient journey through the darkness. And beneath the vast Egyptian sky, children drift into dreams. Tomorrow will bring familiar work. Familiar sounds. Familiar lessons. The management of childhood will continue, not through strict control, but through routine, observation, and the gentle pressure of daily life. And as the river flows onward through the night, another small piece of adulthood quietly settles into the hearts and minds of the children sleeping beside its ancient waters. The Nile moves quietly through the darkness. Far from the great temples and distant palaces that would one day fill history books, the ordinary villages of Egypt rest beneath the stars. The river reflects faint points of light. Reeds whisper along the shoreline. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls and then falls silent again. The air is cooler now. The heat of the day has finally slipped away. Inside countless mud brick homes, children sleep deeply after another long day. Their small hands, which carried baskets, gathered reeds, watched over younger siblings, or helped with household chores, now rest peacefully beside them. The village itself seems asleep. Yet even in these quiet hours, the future is slowly being prepared. Ancient childhood was never only about the present day. It was always connected to what came next. Every lesson pointed forward. Every responsibility pointed forward. Every routine pointed forward. The goal was simple. A child must eventually become an adult capable of managing life. And life in ancient Egypt required many skills. As the hours of darkness pass, the stars slowly will overhead. Generations before these children watched the same sky. Generations after them would do the same. The pattern hardly changes. This continuity shaped the way people thought about growing up. Children were not expected to create entirely new lives for themselves. Instead, they usually stepped into roles already familiar to the family. A farmer's child often became a farmer. A fisherman's child often learned the river. A potter's child often learned clay. A baker's child often learned ovens and grain. The future was often visible from the beginning. Not perfectly visible, but visible enough. A child could look around and see the path ahead. The adults surrounding them were examples of what adulthood looked like. Every day offered demonstrations. Every task offered preparation. As the eastern sky slowly begins to brighten, another morning approaches. The first light touches the horizon. Birds stir among the reeds. The river catches hints of gold. Inside homes, people begin waking one by one. The transition is gradual. No clocks ring. No bells announce the day. The ancient world wakes naturally. A mother rises first. A father follows. Soon children are awake as well. The familiar rhythm begins again. The smell of grain appears. Water is carried. Simple meals are prepared. The village comes alive. For young children, these early mornings are often filled with observation. Adults move confidently through routines they have practiced for years. Children watch every movement. How a fire is started. How bread is prepared. How tools are organized. How animals are cared for. Many of these lessons are never formally explained. They simply become part of the child's understanding. Knowledge enters quietly. The process is almost invisible. Yet it is remarkably effective. A child who spends years observing daily life develops a deep familiarity with it. What once seemed complicated gradually becomes ordinary. And what becomes ordinary eventually becomes manageable. This is one reason childhood in ancient Egypt often appears so practical. Families rarely had the luxury of treating children as separate from the work of life. Children lived inside that work. They learned from it. They contributed to it. And through that contribution, they gained confidence. Imagine a young boy walking beside his father toward the fields. The morning sun is still low. The earth feels cool beneath their feet. The path is familiar. They have traveled it many times before. At first, the boy may simply carry a small tool. Something light. Something manageable. The father does not expect perfection. The task itself is not the point. The experience is the point. Day after day, the child becomes more comfortable, more aware, more capable. Years later, he may follow the same path alone. Not because someone declared him an adult overnight, but because he gradually became one. The same quiet transformation occurs throughout the village. A young girl who once watched bread being baked now helps prepare it herself. A child who once carried tiny bundles now carries larger ones. A child who once needed guidance now offers guidance to younger siblings. The change happens so slowly that it feels natural. There is no sharp dividing line. Only steady growth. As the sun climbs higher, the village grows busy. Voices echo between homes. Animals move through dusty streets. Workers head toward their daily tasks. Children become part of the movement. Some accompany parents. Some remain near home. Others help in small ways throughout the community. Every household has its own rhythm. Every family has its own routines. Yet the larger pattern remains similar. Children are expected to learn, expected to contribute, expected to prepare for the future. This expectation shapes childhood from beginning to end. Not through harshness, not necessarily through strict discipline, but through constant participation in daily life. Along the riverbanks, fishermen prepare their boats. The smell of wet reeds drifts through the air. Nets are inspected carefully. Wood creaks softly beneath shifting weight. Children nearby watch closely. Perhaps one day they too will know the river's moods. The river is never exactly the same from one day to the next. Currents change. Water levels rise and fall. Fish appear in different places. Experience matters. And experience can only be gained through time. This lesson applies far beyond fishing. Much of ancient childhood involves patience. Learning takes years. Skill takes years. Understanding takes years. No shortcuts exist. The ancient world accepts this reality. Children accept it too. As midday approaches, heat settles across the landscape once more. The bright Egyptian sun dominates the sky. Shadows shrink beneath walls and trees. People move more slowly. Work continues, but energy is conserved whenever possible. Children learn this balance as well. They learn how to endure discomfort, how to work despite heat, how to rest when opportunities arise. These practical lessons rarely appear in written records. Yet they shape everyday life. Knowing how to manage exhaustion is a valuable skill. Knowing how to conserve energy is a valuable skill. Ancient childhood teaches these lessons naturally. The environment itself becomes a teacher. Many children also learn about responsibility through caring for younger family members. In larger households, older siblings often play important roles. A young child follows an older brother through the village. A toddler stays close to an older sister while adults work nearby. These relationships create another layer of learning. Responsibility is shared. Guidance is shared. Experience is shared. The household becomes a place where knowledge flows constantly between generations. Even very young children begin observing how care is given. And through observation, they slowly learn how to provide care themselves. As afternoon fades toward evening, activity begins shifting once again. The harshest heat starts to weaken. Long shadows return. A soft golden light spreads across walls, roads, and fields. The village feels calmer now. The busiest work is ending. People begin moving toward home. Children return as well. Dust clings to feet and clothing. The day has left its mark. Yet there is satisfaction in familiar routines completed. Meals are prepared. Water jars are filled. Simple conversations unfold between family members. These evening hours reveal another side of childhood. A quieter side. A more reflective side. Work may dominate much of the day, but evening creates space for connection. Families gather together. Stories are remembered. Advice is shared. Observations about the day are exchanged. Children listen closely. Listening is an important skill in ancient societies. Before widespread literacy, memory carries tremendous importance. People remember instructions. Remember stories. Remember customs. Remember family histories. Children learn to listen because listening helps preserve knowledge. A grandmother's story may contain lessons accumulated over decades. A father's observation about weather may influence future decisions. A mother's practical advice may help avoid mistakes. The wisdom of older generations travels through conversation, and children absorb it little by little. The stars begin appearing once more above the Nile Valley. The sky darkens gradually. Voices soften. The pace of life slows. Lamps flicker inside homes. The scent of evening meals lingers in the air. A cool breeze moves through narrow streets. Children grow sleepy. The day has been long. Tomorrow will arrive quickly. As families prepare for sleep, the village settles into silence again. Somewhere nearby, the river continues flowing. Always moving. Always patient. Its steady journey mirrors the slow progress of childhood itself. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Simply moving forward one day at a time. One lesson at a time. One responsibility at a time. And beneath the stars of ancient Egypt, another quiet night wraps itself around the village, while children drift into sleep carrying with them the countless small lessons of another ordinary day beside the timeless waters of the Nile. The night is deep now. The Nile glides through the darkness with the same patient rhythm it has followed for thousands of years. Moonlight rests softly upon the water. The reeds along the banks sway gently whenever a breeze passes through them. Beyond the fertile land, the desert lies silent beneath the stars, vast and still. The villages sleep. Mud brick homes stand quietly beneath the night sky. Their walls hold traces of the day's warmth. Inside, entire families rest close together. Children sleep beside parents. Parents sleep beside grandparents. Brothers and sisters lie shoulder to shoulder on woven mats. The sounds of breathing fill the darkness. For a few precious hours, labor disappears. The endless responsibilities of the ancient world pause. The fields can wait until morning. The fishing nets can wait until morning. The bread ovens can wait until morning. The Nile alone continues its work. And while the village sleeps, childhood continues its slow journey forward. No one notices it happening. No one marks its progress from one night to the next. Yet every day leaves small traces behind. Every experience adds something. Every season changes a child a little more. Growth often happens quietly. Like the river wearing smooth edges into stone. Like the wind shaping sand over many years. Ancient childhood unfolded in much the same way. As dawn slowly approaches once again, darkness begins to soften. The stars fade one by one. A pale glow appears far to the east. The world feels suspended between night and day. This brief moment before sunrise is often the calmest part of the entire day. The air remains cool. The earth remains quiet. Even the animals seem reluctant to disturb the stillness. Then, little by little, life begins again. A rooster calls. A door opens. Footsteps move across packed earth. The village wakes. Children wake too. Some stretch sleepily. Some sit quietly for a moment before standing. Others immediately begin helping with the morning routines they know so well. These routines rarely change. And because they rarely change, they become deeply familiar. The same tasks repeat each morning. The same responsibilities return. The same expectations greet each new day. To modern eyes, such repetition might seem dull. But for ancient families, repetition provided stability. It provided order. It provided predictability in a world where many things remained uncertain. A family could not control the weather. They could not control illness. They could not control the flooding of the Nile. But they could control their routines. and children grew up within those routines. Learning them, trusting them, becoming part of them. As sunlight spreads across the valley, activity increases. Smoke rises from cooking fires. The smell of baking bread drifts through the air. Water jars are carried from wells and riverbanks. Animals are fed. Tools are gathered. Another working day begins. For many children, one of the most important lessons involved observation. Adults expected young people to pay attention, to notice details, to watch carefully. Observation was valuable because knowledge was valuable. A child who paid attention learned faster. A child who learned faster became useful sooner. This was not viewed as unusual. It was simply part of life. Imagine a young girl sitting quietly beside her grandmother. The older woman repairs a basket woven from reeds gathered along the Nile. Her fingers move with confidence. The motions are smooth and practiced. She does not explain every step. She does not need to. The child watches. Again and again. Day after day. Eventually the child begins trying the same movements herself. At first the basket is uneven. At first mistakes are common. But mistakes are expected. Skill arrives gradually. Like so much else in the ancient world, no one demands immediate mastery. Time itself is part of the process. Elsewhere in the village, a young boy follows an older relative toward a workshop. The air smells faintly of wood dust and clay. Sunlight streams through a doorway. Tools hang from walls. Half-finished projects rest on work surfaces. The child spends hours simply being present. Watching. Listening. Learning. At first glance, it may appear that nothing important is happening. Yet everything important is happening. The child's future is being shaped one observation at a time. Many trades depended heavily upon apprenticeship within families. Knowledge remained valuable because it was difficult to acquire. Skills took years to develop. Children learned by remaining close to experienced adults. This closeness influenced childhood in countless ways. Young people often spent much of their time in adult spaces. Fields. Workshops. Markets. Riverbanks. Storehouses. Children witnessed the realities of life directly. They saw hard work. They saw success. They saw mistakes. They saw disappointment. They saw perseverance. The adult world was not hidden behind closed doors. It surrounded them constantly. As the morning advances, the heat begins building once more. The coolness of dawn fades. The sun climbs steadily upward. Dust rises beneath moving feet. The scent of warm earth fills the air. Children continue their tasks. Some gather reeds. Some carry water. Some watch over animals. Others assist with household duties. Their contributions may be small. Yet those contributions matter. Every completed task lightens the burden carried by someone else. In communities where survival depends upon cooperation, even modest help has value. This understanding develops early. Children learn that their actions affect others. A forgotten task creates problems. A completed task helps the household function smoothly. Responsibility becomes more than an abstract concept. It becomes something visible. Something practical. Something woven into everyday life. The hours pass slowly beneath the Egyptian sun. Workers move steadily through fields. Merchants travel dusty roads. Boats drift along the Nile. Children continue learning through participation. And all around them, The landscape remains familiar. The river, the fields, the villages, the endless sky. This familiarity creates a strong sense of place. Many children spend most of their lives within relatively small areas. The world feels large. Yet daily life remains centered around local communities. The same faces appear again and again. The same landmarks guide movement. The same customs shape behavior. A child grows up surrounded by continuity. That continuity helps define identity. It teaches belonging. By midday, the heat becomes intense. The bright sun dominates the sky. Shade becomes precious. People gather beneath trees or beside walls whenever possible. Children rest alongside adults. Simple meals are eaten. Water is shared. Conversations drift lazily through the warm air. These quieter moments reveal another aspect of childhood. Children spend much of their time listening. Listening to stories. Listening to advice. Listening to memories. Listening to ordinary conversations. Through listening, they learn not only practical skills but social expectations. They learn how adults interact. How disagreements are handled. How respect is shown. How relationships are maintained. Many lessons arrive indirectly. A child hears an elder praised for wisdom. A hard-working neighbor receives respect. A careless decision brings criticism. These observations shape behavior. Without formal instruction, children begin understanding community values. As the afternoon continues, work resumes. The day stretches onward. Tasks remain unfinished. Responsibilities remain waiting. Life in ancient Egypt rarely pauses for long. Yet within this constant activity, children continue growing. Not all growth is physical. Some growth happens inside the mind. Inside the understanding of how the world works. Inside the awareness of what is expected. Each season adds another layer. Each year deepens experience. Gradually, childhood begins giving way to something else. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But steadily. The transition resembles the changing light of evening. There is no single moment when day becomes night. Only a gradual shift. A slow transformation. As sunset approaches, golden light spreads across the Nile Valley. The river glows softly. Palm trees cast long shadows. The heat finally begins releasing its grip. Workers head home. Children accompany them. The village fills with familiar sounds. Voices. Footsteps. Animals. Cooking fires. The day begins winding down. Inside homes, evening routines unfold. Food is prepared. Water jars are checked. Simple repairs are completed. Children help where they can. And as they help, they continue learning. Even ordinary chores contain lessons. How to organize a household. How to plan ahead. How to care for possessions. How to contribute to family life. Nothing is wasted. Every experience teaches something. Darkness eventually settles over the valley once more. The stars emerge above the Nile. Cool air drifts through narrow streets. One by one, lamps flicker softly inside homes. Families gather close. The pace slows. Conversations soften. The ancient world grows quiet. Children begin drifting toward sleep. Their bodies are tired. Their minds are filled with the countless small experiences of another day. The lessons may seem ordinary. The tasks may seem simple. Yet together they form the foundation of adulthood. And so, beneath the vast Egyptian sky, while the river continues its endless journey through the darkness, another peaceful night settles over the villages of the Nile, and childhood moves forward once again, carried gently by routine, family, labor, and the slow passage of time. A gentle silence hangs over the Nile Valley. The moon has climbed higher now, casting a pale silver glow across the river. The water moves with quiet confidence through the darkness, flowing past villages, fields, temples, and stretches of desert that have watched countless generations come and go. Most of the world is asleep. The ovens are cold. The workshops are empty. The boats are tied securely along the shore. Only the occasional sound of wind through reeds disturbs the stillness. Inside a small mud brick home, a child dreams. Perhaps the dream is simple. A day beside the river. A game played with friends. A journey through fields of green grain. The dreams of ancient children have vanished into history. No record remains of them. Yet the children themselves once lived very real lives. They laughed. They worried. They grew tired. They felt curiosity. They made mistakes. And like children in every age, they tried to understand the world around them. That world was shaped by expectations. From the earliest years, children learned that life involved responsibilities. Not because anyone wished to rush them into adulthood, but because adulthood was always approaching. Time moved steadily forward. The river flowed steadily forward. And childhood flowed forward as well. As the darkest hours of night slowly pass, the air cools further. The stars appear almost endless overhead. Ancient Egyptians spent much more of their lives beneath open skies than many people do today. Children became familiar with the movement of stars, the phases of the moon, the changing appearance of the river, the arrival of different seasons. Nature remained a constant companion. The environment was not something distant. It was woven into everyday life. A child walking through the village knew the feel of dust beneath bare feet, knew the scent of warm earth after irrigation, knew the sound of insects singing after sunset, knew the sight of palm trees swaying against the evening sky. These sensory experiences formed the background of childhood. And because they repeated day after day, they became deeply rooted memories. Soon the first hints of dawn appear once again. A faint brightness touches the horizon. The Nile catches the earliest traces of light. The world begins its familiar awakening. Another day is arriving. Another day of work. Another day of learning. Another day of growing. Inside homes, families rise gradually. The routine is so familiar that little discussion is needed. People know what must be done. Tasks seem to unfold naturally. A mother prepares food. A father gathers tools. Children help where they can. The household moves together like a well-practiced rhythm. This rhythm is one of the most powerful forces shaping childhood. Routine teaches without speaking. A child learns responsibility not only because adults explain it, but because responsibility is visible everywhere. The evidence surrounds them. The bread does not bake itself. The water does not carry itself. The crops do not harvest themselves. The household survives because people contribute. Children witness this truth every day. As sunlight spreads across the valley, the village slowly fills with activity. Doors open. Voices emerge. Animals stir. Smoke rises from cooking fires. The scent of fresh bread drifts through the morning air. Children move among adults, sometimes helping, sometimes observing, often doing both at once. A young child may accompany a parent simply to watch. At first, observation is enough. There is value in becoming familiar with the task before attempting it. Ancient childhood often respected this gradual process. Children were not expected to master skills immediately. Instead, they absorbed knowledge over long periods of time. Years, sometimes. A boy watches his father repair a farming tool. A girl watches her mother organize supplies within the home. A younger sibling watches an older sibling perform a chore. Knowledge passes quietly from person to person. No formal lesson plan exists. Life itself provides the curriculum. As the morning advances, the village settles into its working rhythm. The sounds become familiar. Wood being shaped in a workshop. The splash of water against riverbanks. The soft calls of merchants arranging goods. The distant voices of workers in the fields. Children grow up surrounded by these sounds. The sounds become part of their understanding of normal life. Many children likely knew very little of distant lands. Their world centered around local experiences. The river nearby. The fields nearby. The market nearby. The people they saw every day. And within that smaller world, they developed deep knowledge. Knowledge of seasons. Knowledge of customs. Knowledge of relationships. Knowledge of practical skills. A child might know every bend of a familiar path. Every shaded corner of the village. Every household within walking distance. This local understanding created a strong sense of belonging. The village was not simply a place. It was a community of shared expectations. Children learned these expectations constantly. Sometimes through praise. Sometimes through correction. Sometimes simply through observation. Adults rarely needed lengthy explanations. Behavior was modeled everywhere. Respect for elders. Cooperation within families. Care for shared resources. Attention to duties. These values appeared repeatedly in everyday life. And repeated experiences often become powerful teachers. By midday, the sun dominates the sky. Heat spreads across the land. Workers slow their pace slightly. Shade becomes increasingly valuable. Children seek relief alongside adults. Perhaps they sit beneath a tree near the edge of a field. Perhaps they rest beside a wall cooled by shadow. The pause offers a moment of calm. Water is shared. Simple food is eaten. Conversation drifts lazily through the warm air. In these moments, children often hear stories. Not grand historical stories. Not tales of kings and battles. Ordinary stories. Family stories. Stories about difficult harvests. Stories about clever neighbors. Stories about mistakes and lessons learned. These stories serve important purposes. They preserve memory. They transmit values. They help children understand their place within a larger chain of generations. A child listening today may someday become the storyteller. The listener eventually becomes the speaker. The cycle continues. As afternoon arrives, work resumes. Children return to their tasks. A young girl helps sort household supplies. A boy assists with animals. Another child accompanies a relative to gather materials needed for repairs. Each task may seem small. Yet childhood is built from small things. Small habits. Small responsibilities. Small observations. Together they create the foundation of adulthood. Ancient people understood this instinctively. They knew that competence developed gradually. That trust developed gradually. That maturity developed gradually. No one expected transformation overnight. Time remained the essential ingredient. Time and repetition. As the day slowly moves toward evening, the harsh brightness begins to soften. Golden light spreads across the landscape. The Nile reflects warm colors. Palm trees cast long shadows across dusty paths. Workers begin returning home. Children walk alongside them. The pace of the village changes. Energy that was spent outward during the day now turns inward toward family life. Cooking fires are prepared. Meals are organized. Animals are secured for the night. Children assist with final chores. These evening tasks often feel different from those performed earlier. The urgency has faded. The heat has faded. The atmosphere becomes calmer. Voices soften. Movements slow. A sense of completion settles over the community. Another day has been successfully navigated. For children, evenings provide valuable opportunities to observe family dynamics. They watch how adults discuss problems, how decisions are made, how disagreements are resolved, how resources are managed. These lessons rarely appear in written records. Yet they may be among the most important lessons childhood offers. Learning how to live with others, how to contribute to a household, how to balance personal needs with community needs. These skills shape adulthood just as much as any trade or occupation. As darkness returns to the Nile Valley, lamps flicker softly inside homes. The stars emerge overhead. The air grows cooler. Families gather together. Some talk quietly. Some simply enjoy the peaceful end of the day. Children grow sleepy. The demands of the day have left their mark. Tired muscles relax. Heavy eyelids begin to close. Outside, the river continues flowing beneath the moonlight. Steady. Patient. Unchanging. And as another ancient night settles over Egypt, childhood continues its slow and gentle movement forward. Not through dramatic moments. Not through grand celebrations. But through ordinary days lived one after another. Days filled with labor. Days filled with observation. Days filled with family. Days filled with countless small lessons that quietly prepare children for the lives waiting ahead beside the eternal waters of the Nile. The Nile flows beneath a sky crowded with stars. The villages resting along its banks seem small from above, little clusters of mud brick homes gathered close to the water that gives them life. The darkness softens every edge. Roads disappear into shadow. Palm trees become silhouettes against the moonlit sky. The entire valley seems wrapped in a blanket of quiet. Inside these sleeping homes, children lie surrounded by the familiar sounds of family. A parent's breathing. The rustle of woven mats. The occasional shifting of someone turning in their sleep. These sounds are comforting because they are known. Known things often bring comfort. And childhood in ancient Egypt was filled with things that remained known and familiar. The same home. The same village. The same river. The same routines. Day after day. Year after year. The world changed slowly. A child could spend many years watching the same path fill with dust beneath the summer sun. Many years watching the Nile rise and fall with the seasons. Many years hearing the same stories told by older relatives during the evening hours. There was a steadiness to life that shaped the way childhood unfolded. Before dawn arrives, the valley experiences one of its quietest moments. The air feels cool against the skin. The stars still shine brightly overhead. For a short time, the world belongs to silence. Then gradually, as always, morning begins. The eastern horizon brightens. Birds stir among the reeds. The river catches the first golden reflections of sunlight. Ancient Egypt awakens once more. A child opens their eyes. Another day has begun. There is no question about what the day will contain. Certain tasks must happen. Certain responsibilities must be fulfilled. The household depends upon them. The community depends upon them. And in this way, children learn something important very early in life. They learn that they are connected to others. Their actions matter. Their effort matters. Their participation matters. A child may not understand the full importance of every chore, but they understand that adults notice when tasks are completed, and adults notice when tasks are ignored. This awareness helps shape behavior. It helps shape identity. It helps shape a sense of belonging within the family. As sunlight spreads across the valley, the morning grows busier. The smell of bread baking begins to drift through the air. Smoke rises from cooking fires. People move between homes carrying baskets, tools, and jars. Children become part of this movement. Some help prepare food. Some fetch water. Some accompany adults to fields or workshops. Others care for younger siblings while older family members work. These responsibilities are not always large. Often they are quite small. But small responsibilities have a way of growing over time. A child who can be trusted with a simple task today may be trusted with a larger task next year. Trust develops gradually. And childhood is filled with opportunities to earn it. Imagine a young girl carrying a clay vessel from the river. She walks carefully. The vessel is valuable. Breaking it would create difficulties for the household. Every step requires attention. Every movement requires care. The task itself is simple. Yet hidden within it are important lessons. Patience. Responsibility. Concentration. The ability to complete a job properly. Ancient childhood often taught through experiences exactly like these. The lesson and the task were the same thing. Elsewhere in the village, a boy follows older workers toward a field. The earth smells fresh from recent irrigation. The morning air still carries traces of coolness. He listens as adults discuss crops and water levels. Some of the conversation makes sense. Some does not. That is perfectly normal. Learning rarely happens all at once. Knowledge arrives in pieces. A little today. A little tomorrow. A little next season. Over many years, those pieces come together. One of the most important features of childhood in ancient Egypt is the slow accumulation of understanding. No single moment transforms a child into an adult. No single lesson provides complete knowledge. Growth happens through countless ordinary experiences. Through repetition. Through observation. Through participation. Through time. The ancient world trusted this process. And because it trusted the process, childhood was often managed quietly rather than intensely directed. Adults did not need to explain everything. Life itself provided many explanations. As the day advances, the sun climbs higher. The coolness of morning disappears. Heat settles across the landscape. The bright Egyptian sky stretches endlessly overhead. Workers continue their labor. Children continue learning. The rhythm remains steady. In many ways, the village resembles a living organism. Every person has a role. Every role contributes something. Children spend years discovering where they fit within this larger system. Some become skilled with tools. Some develop talent for trade. Some learn household management. Some learn writing. Others learn fishing, farming, weaving, building, or countless other skills. The specific path varies. The expectation remains. Eventually, every child must find a place within the community. This expectation shapes much of childhood. Not harshly. Not necessarily through pressure, but through constant exposure to adult life. A child grows up watching adults work, watching adults solve problems, watching adults cooperate, watching adults endure difficulties. The lessons are always present. As midday approaches, the village begins seeking relief from the heat. Shade becomes precious. People gather beneath trees or beside thick walls that offer protection from the sun. Children rest alongside them. These pauses provide moments for conversation. Stories are shared. Advice is offered. Questions are answered. The pace slows. The atmosphere softens. Perhaps an older relative recalls a flood from many years ago. Perhaps someone describes a journey to a nearby town. Perhaps a family memory is repeated once again. Children listen. They may hear the same stories many times throughout their lives. Repetition is not considered a problem. Repetition helps memory. Memory helps preserve knowledge. Knowledge helps preserve the community. The cycle continues. Many ancient societies relied heavily upon oral traditions. Long before information could be stored easily, people carried it within themselves. Children learned to remember, to pay attention, to listen carefully. These abilities were valuable. A forgotten instruction could create difficulties. A remembered lesson could prevent them. As the afternoon stretches onward, daily life resumes its familiar pace. The sounds of work return. The smell of warm earth fills the air. Dust drifts across roads traveled by countless feet. Children move through these spaces with increasing confidence. The village becomes easier to understand as they grow older. Places once mysterious become familiar. Tasks once difficult become routine. The transformation happens so slowly that it is almost impossible to notice. Yet it happens nonetheless. A child who once needed constant supervision eventually moves independently through the community. A child who once observed from the sidelines eventually participates directly. A child who once received instruction eventually begins helping younger children. The cycle repeats itself generation after generation. As evening approaches, the light begins changing once more. Golden sunlight spreads across the Nile. The river seems almost luminous. Palm trees sway gently in the breeze. Workers begin returning home. Children return as well. The village gathers itself together after another long day. Cooking fires appear. Voices drift through the air. The smell of baking bread returns once again. These evening hours reveal something important about childhood. Despite all the work and responsibility, family remains at the center of life. The household is where lessons are reinforced, where stories are shared, where customs are preserved, where children find their place within a larger network of relationships. Parents, grandparents, siblings, cousins, neighbors all contribute to the process of raising a child. Childhood is not managed by one person alone. It is shaped by the entire community. As darkness settles over the valley, lamps begin glowing softly behind doorways and windows. The stars emerge above the river. A cooler breeze moves through the village. The day's work is finished. Families gather close. Some talk quietly. Some simply enjoy the peacefulness of evening. Children grow drowsy. The steady rhythm of the day has guided them from sunrise to sunset once again. Soon they will sleep. And while they sleep, the process of growing up will continue. Not visibly, not dramatically, but steadily. One day at a time. One season at a time. 1 year at a time. The Nile will continue flowing. The stars will continue turning overhead. And beneath that vast Egyptian sky, another generation of children will continue learning how to live, how to work, and how to belong within the ancient world that surrounds them. The stars drift slowly across the heavens above ancient Egypt. Night covers the Nile Valley with a calm and familiar darkness. The river glimmers beneath the moonlight. Along its banks, clusters of reeds lean gently with the breeze. Beyond the fertile land, the desert waits in silence, its sands cool now after the long heat of the day. The villages sleep. The day's labor has ended. The conversations have faded. The cooking fires have burned low. Children rest beside family members, surrounded by the quiet sounds of home. For many of them, tomorrow will look much like today. And the day after that will be similar as well. This repetition was not considered a burden. It was simply life. In fact, much of childhood in ancient Egypt depended upon repetition. The same tasks repeated. The same lessons repeated. The same customs repeated. The same expectations repeated. Through repetition, children slowly absorbed the knowledge needed for adulthood. As the deepest hours of the night pass, the air grows cooler still. A fisherman sleeping near the river may pull a cloth closer around himself. A child turns slightly on a woven mat. Somewhere nearby, a dog lifts its head briefly before settling down again. The world feels peaceful. The Nile moves steadily onward. If one could quietly walk through an Egyptian village during these hours, there would be little to disturb the silence. The narrow roads would be empty. Clay jars would stand quietly outside homes. Simple wooden tools would rest where they had been left. Everything waits for morning. And morning always comes. Eventually the eastern horizon begins to brighten. The stars fade one by one. The first birds begin their songs. The river catches the earliest light. Another day starts. Children wake to familiar sounds. The crackling of a small fire. The movement of family members preparing for work. The low voices of adults discussing the day ahead. The smell of grain and bread. These experiences form the backdrop of childhood. They occur so often that they become part of a child's understanding of what life is supposed to feel like. There is comfort in familiarity. The known world feels safe. And many children spent most of their early years within a relatively small circle of places and people. Their home. Their village. The nearby fields. The riverbank. The market. The workshop. These places became deeply connected to memory. A child might know every uneven stone along a familiar path. Every tree that offered shade during the hottest afternoons. Every household that lined the road to the river. This close relationship with place created a strong sense of belonging. Life may have been demanding. Yet it was also familiar. As the sun rises, activity spreads throughout the village. Adults move toward their responsibilities. Children follow. Some carry tools. Some carry baskets. Others simply accompany older family members. The process of learning continues. In many ways, childhood in ancient Egypt can be understood as a long period of observation. Children watched everything. They watched adults work. They watched adults solve problems. They watched adults interact with neighbors. They watched adults respond to challenges. Observation provided information that no formal lesson could fully capture. A child learns not only what people do, but how they do it, how they speak, how they move, how they react when things go wrong, how they recover when mistakes are made. These subtle lessons shape character. A young child may watch a parent repair a broken tool. The repair takes patience. The repair takes concentration. The child sees that frustration does not solve the problem. Careful effort does. A simple moment becomes a lesson. Not because anyone announces it as one, but because the child is paying attention. This kind of learning happens constantly. Throughout the village. Throughout the fields. Throughout the workshops. As the morning continues, the sounds of work become louder. Stone grinding grain. Wood being shaped. Animals moving through enclosures. Voices calling across open spaces. Children grow up immersed in these sounds. The sounds become associated with security and normalcy. A quiet village during daylight hours might actually feel unusual. Work creates the soundtrack of daily life. And because work is everywhere, childhood remains closely connected to it. This does not mean children worked every moment. Far from it. Even in busy communities, children found opportunities for play. The human desire for play appears throughout history. Ancient Egypt was no exception. A group of children may gather near a shaded area between homes. Perhaps they play a game using small stones. Perhaps they chase one another through narrow paths. Perhaps they invent stories and adventures inspired by the world around them. Their laughter briefly rises above the sounds of the village. For a little while, responsibilities fade into the background. Yet even these moments exist within the larger structure of community life. Play happens between duties. Within daily routines. Alongside family responsibilities. It is woven into ordinary life rather than separated from it. As children grow older, the balance gradually shifts. Responsibilities increase. Expectations expand. A child who once spent most of the day playing now spends more time assisting adults. The transition happens slowly. Almost invisibly. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly becomes grown. Instead, adulthood approaches step by step. A little more trust. A little more responsibility. A little more independence. The process takes years. As midday arrives, the heat spreads across the Nile Valley. The bright sun shines overhead. The air feels heavy. Workers seek moments of shade whenever possible. Children do the same. These quieter periods reveal another important aspect of childhood. Children spend enormous amounts of time listening. Listening to conversations between adults. Listening to family stories. Listening to advice repeated across generations. Many important lessons arrive this way. Not through formal teaching, but through simple exposure. A child hears older relatives discussing the importance of honesty, the importance of diligence, the importance of cooperation. The child hears these values expressed again and again. Eventually they become familiar. Eventually they become expectations. And expectations help shape behavior. Ancient communities depended upon trust. Neighbors relied upon one another. Families relied upon one another. A reputation for reliability carried real value. Children learned this early. Not through abstract ideas, but through examples visible all around them. They watched respected adults receive respect. They watched dependable people earn trust. they observed how communities functioned. And through observation, they learned their own place within that system. The afternoon stretches onward. Dust drifts through warm sunlight. The smell of earth and river water fills the air. A merchant leads a donkey along a familiar road. Workers continue their tasks. Children continue learning. Everywhere, life moves at a steady pace. Nothing feels rushed. The ancient world often demanded patience. Crops required patience. Crafts required patience. Journeys required patience. Childhood required patience too. Growth could not be hurried. Experience could not be rushed. Wisdom arrived gradually. Season after season. Year after year. As evening approaches, long shadows return. The harsh brightness softens. Golden light settles across the landscape. The Nile reflects the colors of sunset. Many workers begin making their way home. Children walk alongside them. The atmosphere changes. The energy of labor slowly gives way to the comfort of family life. Homes become gathering places once again. Meals are prepared. Water is stored. Simple repairs are completed before darkness arrives. Children assist with these final tasks. And while they assist, they continue learning. Every chore teaches something. Every responsibility builds confidence. Every completed task reinforces trust. These small experiences accumulate over time. Eventually they form the foundation of adulthood. As darkness spreads across the valley, lamps begin to glow inside homes. Families gather together. The sounds of work fade. The sounds of conversation take their place. Stories are shared. Advice is offered. Memories are recalled. Children listen carefully. Perhaps a grandparent speaks about years long past. Perhaps a parent describes a challenge overcome through perseverance. Perhaps neighbors discuss ordinary events from the day. To an outsider, these conversations might seem simple. But simple conversations often carry deep lessons. Lessons about values. Lessons about community. Lessons about how to live. The stars emerge once more above the Nile. The air grows cooler. The village becomes quieter. Children begin drifting toward sleep. Their minds carry the experiences of another day. A day of observation. A day of small responsibilities. A day of familiar routines. A day that quietly prepared them for the future. And while they sleep beneath the ancient sky, the Nile continues its endless journey through the darkness, flowing patiently past villages where childhood is shaped not by grand declarations, but by countless ordinary moments repeated gently across the generations. The Nile breathes softly beneath the moonlight. Its dark waters slip through the valley with quiet certainty, flowing past sleeping villages and silent fields. The river does not hurry. It never has. For thousands of years it has followed the same patient path, carrying life through the heart of Egypt. Tonight, the banks of the river are calm. The fishing boats rest motionless. The reeds whisper gently whenever the wind stirs them. Palm trees stand like dark guardians against the stars. The entire landscape seems suspended between memory and dream. Inside the homes scattered across the valley, children sleep. Some are very young, still close to the earliest years of life. Others are already approaching adolescence. Yet all of them exist within the same slow current of childhood. A current shaped by family. By work. By routine. By the quiet expectations of the world around them. In the darkness, there is no sign of these expectations. The sleeping child appears peaceful. Small. protected. Yet tomorrow morning those expectations will return, just as surely as the sun rise. The ancient world was gentle in some ways and demanding in others. It could offer beauty. The beauty of river water shining beneath dawn light. The beauty of cool evening breezes after a day of heat. The beauty of green fields spreading beside the Nile. But it also required effort. Daily effort. Steady effort. And children grew up understanding this reality. As the night slowly begins to fade, the eastern horizon brightens. A faint silver line appears where earth meets sky. Birds begin calling from hidden places among the reeds. The darkness loosens its hold. Morning arrives once again. Within the homes of the village, people stir awake. A mother rises quietly. A father stretches tired muscles. Children blink sleep from their eyes. The day begins. There is something almost comforting about the predictability of it all. No one wonders what life expects. The expectations are already known. Food must be prepared. Water must be gathered. Animals must be tended. Fields must be worked. Repairs must be completed. Life continues. And childhood continues within it. A young child watches an older sibling tie a bundle of reeds. The older sibling has done this many times before. The movements are smooth, confident, almost automatic. The younger child watches carefully. One day those same movements will belong to them. This is how many lessons pass from generation to generation. Not through formal teaching, but through observation and imitation. The child watches, then tries, then improves, then eventually teaches someone else. The cycle repeats. As sunlight spreads across the village, activity increases. The smell of fresh bread begins filling the air. Smoke curls upward from cooking fires. Voices echo softly between homes. Children move through this familiar environment with growing confidence. The world no longer feels mysterious. It feels known. And knowing one's surroundings brings a sense of security. A child knows where water is collected. Knows where grain is stored. Knows which paths lead to the river. Knows which adults can be trusted. Knows which places belong to work and which belong to rest. This understanding develops gradually. Like all important things in ancient childhood. Slowly. Patiently. Over time. For many children, one of the most powerful teachers was simple repetition. A modern observer might find the routine surprisingly repetitive. The same chores. The same responsibilities. The same daily patterns. Yet repetition has its own kind of wisdom. Every repeated action strengthens memory. Every repeated task builds competence. Every repeated experience creates familiarity. Children learn because they do things again and again. Not because someone explains every detail. The world itself becomes the instructor. Imagine a girl helping prepare bread. At first she watches. Then she assists. Then she performs small parts of the process herself. Years pass. Eventually she can complete the entire process without guidance. The knowledge feels natural. Almost effortless. But it was built through thousands of small observations spread across childhood. The same pattern appears everywhere. A fisherman learns the river. A farmer learns the fields. A craftsperson learns a trade. A household manager learns countless practical skills. The learning process remains remarkably similar. Time. Observation. Participation. Repetition. These are the foundations upon which much of ancient childhood rests. As the sun climbs higher, warmth begins spreading across the valley. The coolness of dawn disappears. Dust rises beneath busy feet. The sounds of labor become more noticeable. Stone grinding grain. Tools striking wood. Water splashing into jars. Animals calling from nearby enclosures. Children move among these sounds. The sounds become part of daily life. Part of memory. Part of identity. Years later, an adult might hear similar sounds and instantly feel connected to childhood. The human mind often remembers through sensation, through smell, through sound, through touch. Ancient children were no different. The smell of bread baking, the warmth of sunlit walls, the rough texture of woven baskets, the cool feel of river water. These experiences shaped memory as surely as any lesson. As midday approaches, the heat settles heavily over the landscape. The bright Egyptian sun shines directly overhead. Workers seek relief where they can find it. Shade becomes precious. Children gather beneath trees or beside walls. Some rest quietly. Some talk with friends. Some simply watch the world around them. Observation never truly stops. Even during moments of rest. A child watching adults interact learns about relationships. Learns about cooperation. Learns about respect. Learns about community expectations. These lessons are subtle. Yet they may be among the most important lessons of all. Ancient societies depended heavily upon social harmony. Families lived closely together. Neighbors depended upon one another. Conflict could create serious difficulties. Children therefore spent years learning how to function within a group. How to contribute. How to cooperate. How to fulfill obligations. This process often began long before they fully understood it. As afternoon stretches across the valley, the pace slows slightly. The heat encourages patience. Movement becomes more deliberate. The world seems quieter. A child accompanies a parent through the village. Along the way, they greet familiar faces. Exchange simple words. Observe daily activities. These small interactions teach another important lesson. A community is made of relationships. People know one another. Depend upon one another. Remember one another. Children grow up surrounded by these connections. Over time, they become part of the network themselves. The village is not merely a collection of homes. It is a web of obligations, trust, and shared experience. And childhood unfolds within that web. As evening approaches, the sunlight softens. Long shadows stretch across dusty roads. The river glows with golden reflections. The hottest hours have passed. Relief arrives with the fading sun. Workers begin returning home. Children return too. The village slowly gathers itself together. Cooking fires appear. The smell of food fills the air. Voices drift through the warm evening breeze. These are some of the gentlest moments of the day. Labor is ending. Night has not yet arrived. Families reconnect after hours spent apart. Children often remain nearby during conversations. Listening. Watching. Absorbing. The evening hours provide opportunities for stories. Not dramatic stories. Not necessarily famous stories. Simply the stories that families tell. Stories about relatives. About unusual seasons. About mistakes. About successes. About ordinary life. These stories help children understand who they are. Where they belong. What their community values. What lessons previous generations considered important. In a world where much knowledge passes from person to person, storytelling becomes a form of education. Not formal education, but education nonetheless. As darkness settles once again across the Nile Valley, lamps flicker softly inside homes. The stars emerge overhead. A cooler breeze moves through the village. The sounds of work fade away. Families prepare for sleep. Children feel the weight of another full day. Their eyes grow heavy. Their bodies relax. The familiar rhythms of childhood have carried them from dawn to dusk once more. Outside, the Nile continues its endless journey through the night. Patient, steady, unchanging. And beneath the vast sky of ancient Egypt, another generation of children drifts into sleep, shaped little by little through routine, responsibility, observation, and the countless ordinary moments that quietly guide them toward adulthood beside the timeless river. The Nile flows onward through the darkness. Night after night, century after century, its waters continue their patient journey between banks lined with reeds and fertile earth. The river does not concern itself with kings or monuments. It moves past them all, carrying reflections of stars upon its surface and nourishing the lives of ordinary people who depend upon it. Tonight the valley is quiet. A cool breeze drifts across the water. Palm fronds rustle softly in the darkness. The distant desert lies beneath a blanket of moonlight. The villages sleep. Within those villages, countless children rest after another day shaped by familiar routines. Some dream. Some sleep so deeply that the world disappears completely. Others stir occasionally as sounds drift through the night. The creak of a wooden beam. The movement of a family member nearby. The soft whisper of wind passing through a doorway. The home is full of these small sounds. And for a child, they become part of what safety feels like. Ancient homes were often modest. Their walls were made from mud brick formed under the Egyptian sun. The floors might be packed earth or simple plaster. Furniture was limited. Space was often shared. Privacy, as many people understand it today, was rare. Families lived closely together. Children grew up surrounded by the constant presence of others. Parents, grandparents, siblings, relatives, neighbors. Life unfolded in a shared space. This closeness shaped childhood in important ways. A child was rarely alone. There was almost always someone nearby. Someone working. Someone talking. Someone carrying out a daily task. Someone offering guidance. The community itself became part of the process of raising children. As the deepest part of the night slowly passes, the stars will overhead. The air remains cool. For a little while longer, the night is quiet. The valley belongs to silence. The river moves slowly through the darkness. Far to the east, carrying the first signs of morning appear. Black earth and long rows of reeds. The darkness begins to soften. Above it, the horizon brightens with steady light. Birds awaken among the reeds. These lands for thousands of years. The Nile catches the earliest glow of dawn. Farmers walk dusty paths. Another day is arriving. Inside a village home, fishermen push wooden boats into still water. Perhaps not immediately. Tired workers return home. Perhaps beneath evening colors. The warmth of sleep lingers. They watch children. The woven mat beneath them feels familiar. Some lived in small brick homes. Family members are already beginning their routines. Others lived in crowded villages. The child listens for a moment. The sounds are known in busy towns where workshops filled narrow streets with the sounds of tools striking. The ancient world often provided few surprises during ordinary days. And that predictability created a sense of order. Their voices understood where they belonged. Understood what was expected. Desert air drifts gently. Understood the rhythm of life around them. We will spend time among these children. Soon the home becomes active. We will move slowly through their world. Food is organized beside them through ordinary days. Water is carried. We will sit the day begins unfolding exactly as countless days have unfolded before. And within these routines, in the silence, another important lesson quietly emerges. We may begin to understand the lesson of many children grew up without every member of the household contributes something. Before sunrise, the contribution may be large over the land. The contribution may be small, but everyone participates. A young child may gather kindling. An older sibling may carry water. An adult may spend hours working in the fields. The scale differs. The principle remains. The household functions because people work together. Children learn this truth very early. Not through speeches. Not through formal instruction. Simply through experience. As sunlight spreads across the village, daily life becomes visible once again. Dusty roads. Mud brick walls. Clay storage jars. Small gardens. Animals moving through familiar spaces. Children walk among these sights every day. Over time, they develop a deep understanding of their surroundings. A child knows which homes belong to which families. Knows where certain tools are kept. Knows which paths flood during certain seasons. Knows where shade can be found during the hottest hours. This practical knowledge accumulates gradually. The village becomes a map stored within memory. And because children spend years within the same environment, that map becomes detailed and reliable. As the morning continues, adults move toward their work. Children often accompany them. Not necessarily because they are needed. Sometimes simply because observation itself is valuable. A child standing beside an experienced worker learns more than might be obvious. They learn procedures, techniques, habits. They also learn attitudes, patience, persistence, attention to detail. The emotional side of labor can be just as important as the practical side. A farmer who remains calm during difficulties teaches a lesson. A craftsperson who works carefully teaches a lesson. A parent who fulfills responsibilities despite fatigue teaches a lesson. Children absorb these examples constantly. The learning never truly stops. As the sun rises higher, warmth begins spreading across the valley. The air grows heavier. The bright Egyptian sky stretches endlessly overhead. Workers continue their tasks. Children continue learning. Life continues moving forward at its steady pace. For many children, one of the most significant experiences of childhood is watching adults solve problems. Life in ancient Egypt presented countless challenges. Tools broke. Animals wandered. Crops sometimes struggled. Supplies sometimes ran short. Unexpected difficulties appeared regularly. Children witnessed how adults responded. They learned that problems were part of life. Not unusual. Not catastrophic. Simply part of existence. A broken tool required repair. A missing animal required searching. A damaged roof required fixing. The lesson was practical. When something goes wrong, you address it. Then you continue. This mindset quietly prepared children for adulthood. As midday approaches, the heat intensifies. Shadows shorten. The landscape shimmers beneath the sun. People seek relief wherever they can find it. Children gather beneath trees, near walls, beside shaded areas where the air feels slightly cooler. These pauses often become opportunities for conversation. A child asks a question. An elder offers an answer. Someone shares a memory. Someone tells a story. Knowledge moves naturally through these exchanges. There is rarely a formal lesson. Yet lessons happen constantly. The older generations carry experience. The younger generations absorb it. This transfer of knowledge is one of the most important functions of childhood. A community survives because its knowledge survives. And knowledge survives because it is passed onward. The afternoon arrives slowly. The heat remains strong. Work continues. Children move through familiar responsibilities. Some tasks are repetitive. Very repetitive. The same actions performed again and again. But repetition serves a purpose. Repetition builds confidence. Repetition builds skill. A child who performs a task hundreds of times eventually performs it without hesitation. The task becomes part of them. Part of their understanding of how the world works. Ancient childhood often depended upon this process. Mastery through repetition rather than novelty. As the sun begins descending toward the western horizon, the atmosphere changes. The harsh brightness softens. Long shadows return. The river reflects gold and amber light. The village breathes a little easier. The worst heat has passed. Workers begin finishing their tasks. Children help complete the final responsibilities of the day. Water jars are checked. Animals are secured. Tools are stored safely. These simple actions help create order. And order matters. A well-organized household functions more smoothly. A child learns this through experience. Not because someone constantly explains it. Because they see the results. Preparation today makes tomorrow easier. The lesson repeats itself again and again. As evening settles across the Nile Valley, cooking fires begin appearing throughout the village. The smell of bread and simple meals drifts through the air. Families gather together. Voices carry softly through open spaces. The atmosphere becomes warm and welcoming. These evening hours may have been among the most important moments of childhood. Not because they were dramatic. Because they were shared. The day's work is finished. People have time to talk. Time to listen. Time to simply be together. Children sit nearby. Perhaps they help with the final chore. Perhaps they simply listen while adults speak. Either way, learning continues. Stories reveal values. Conversations reveal priorities. Family life reveals expectations. Everything contributes. Everything teaches. Eventually darkness returns. The stars emerge above the river. The air cools. The village grows quieter. One by one, lamps dim. One by one, families prepare for sleep. Children settle onto woven mats. Their bodies feel pleasantly tired from the day. Outside, the Nile continues flowing through the darkness. Steady as ever. Patient as ever. And while another ancient night settles gently across the valley, childhood continues its quiet work, shaping the next generation not through grand moments, but through the endless accumulation of ordinary days beside the timeless river. The Nile moves through the darkness like a ribbon of black glass. Moonlight settles across its surface. The water catches silver reflections from the stars above. Along the riverbanks, reeds sway softly whenever the night breeze passes through them. Beyond the fertile strip of green land, the desert stretches outward into silence, calm and endless beneath the sky. The villages sleep. The fields rest. The workshops stand empty. Even the animals seem quieter now. For a few peaceful hours, the entire valley breathes slowly. Inside a modest mud brick home, a child sleeps beside family members. The room is simple. A few clay jars rest against the wall. A woven basket sits in the corner. A folded piece of cloth lies nearby. Nothing appears grand or remarkable. Yet this small room contains an entire world. For the child sleeping here, these walls hold memories. The sounds. The smells. The familiar faces. Everything feels known. Everything feels secure. Ancient childhood was often rooted deeply in familiarity. Many children spent years surrounded by the same people and the same places. The village changed slowly. The rhythms of life changed slowly. The seasons came and went. Children grew. Yet much remained reassuringly familiar. As the stars drift overhead, another quiet truth about childhood begins to emerge. Ancient childhood was not only about learning how to work. It was also about learning how to endure. Life along the Nile could be beautiful. The river provided food. The land produced crops. Communities offered support. But life could also be difficult. The sun was relentless. Illness was common. Resources were sometimes limited. Unexpected hardships appeared without warning. Children witnessed these realities from an early age. They learned that discomfort was part of life. They learned that patience was necessary. They learned that strength often meant continuing despite challenges. These lessons were rarely taught directly. They were observed, experienced, absorbed. The eastern horizon begins to brighten. Morning approaches once again. The stars fade. Birds awaken. The first light touches the river. A new day begins. Inside the home, family members slowly stir. A mother rises and prepares the morning fire. A father stretches after sleep. Children wake one by one. The familiar routine returns. There is comfort in knowing what comes next. The household knows its responsibilities. The village knows its responsibilities. The day unfolds according to patterns repeated countless times before. As sunlight spreads across the valley, children begin participating in the life around them. Some tasks are small. Very small. A child carries a handful of kindling. A child watches a younger sibling. A child helps organize household items. These tasks may seem insignificant. Yet they matter. Not because of the labor itself. Because of what the labor teaches. Responsibility begins with small things. Trust begins with small things. Confidence begins with small things. A child who successfully completes simple tasks gradually becomes capable of more complex ones. The process is slow. But ancient societies were accustomed to slow processes. The Nile itself moved slowly. Crops grew slowly. Children matured slowly. Everything followed its own pace. No one expected immediate results. As the village becomes busy with activity, children move through familiar spaces. The roads are dusty. The air smells faintly of earth and grain. The sounds of daily work begin rising from every direction. Stone grinding grain. Water being poured into clay jars. Animals shifting within enclosures. Voices exchanging greetings. The village feels alive. And within that living community, children continue learning. Many lessons come through observation. But many others come through simple participation. A child helping to carry water learns about effort. Learns about balance. Learns about patience. A child assisting with food preparation learns about organization. Learns about timing. Learns about cooperation. The tasks themselves are practical. The lessons hidden inside them are deeper. Ancient childhood often taught character through action. Rather than discussing responsibility, children practiced responsibility. Rather than discussing cooperation, children practiced cooperation. Life itself became the classroom. As morning stretches toward midday, the sun grows stronger. Warmth spreads across the land. Shadows become smaller. The heat begins its daily rise. Workers continue moving steadily through their duties. Children accompany them. A young boy follows older relatives into the fields. The scent of growing crops fills the air. Water glimmers in irrigation channels. The earth feels warm beneath his feet. The adults discuss the condition of the harvest. They discuss timing, weather, water levels. The boy listens. Some of the conversation makes sense. Some does not. That is perfectly normal. Much of childhood involves collecting pieces of understanding. At first, the pieces seem disconnected. Over time, they begin fitting together. Years later, conversations that once sounded mysterious become completely familiar. This gradual growth of understanding happens everywhere. A girl watching bread being baked experiences the same process. At first, she notices only the obvious steps. As she grows older, she begins understanding details. How long dough must rest. How heat affects baking. How ingredients are managed. Knowledge deepens layer by layer. The process cannot be rushed. And nobody expects it to be rushed. One reason childhood was managed rather than intensely focused upon is because ancient societies trusted time. Time would teach. Time would reveal. Time would transform children into adults. The process required guidance, certainly. But it also required patience. As midday arrives, the heat settles heavily across the valley. The bright Egyptian sun dominates the sky. Workers seek moments of shade. Children do the same. The pace slows. Conversations become quieter. People conserve energy. These periods of rest often reveal the social side of childhood. Children gather together. Friends sit beneath trees. Siblings share food. Stories are exchanged. Observations are made. Questions are asked. The social world of children develops naturally within the larger world of adults. Children form friendships. Develop loyalties. Create memories. Yet even these relationships often exist within the framework of community responsibilities. Everyone belongs to something larger than themselves. The family. The village. The household. The community. These connections shape identity. As the afternoon unfolds, work resumes. The sounds of labor return. Dust drifts through sunlight. The smell of warm earth fills the air. Children continue participating in daily life. And as they participate, they become increasingly familiar with the expectations surrounding them. What does it mean to be dependable? What does it mean to be respectful? What does it mean to contribute? Ancient childhood answers these questions through experience. A child observes which behaviors earn trust. Observes which behaviors create problems. Observes which adults are respected. Observes why they are respected. These observations gradually shape personal values. The lessons are subtle. Yet they are powerful. As evening approaches, the heat finally begins to retreat. Long shadows stretch across the land. The Nile reflects golden light. The village slows its pace. Workers return home. Children return too. The familiar evening routines begin. Cooking fires are lit. Water is stored. Animals are checked. Simple repairs are completed. The day moves toward its conclusion. For many families, evenings provide valuable time together. Children hear conversations between generations. Grandparents share memories. Parents discuss responsibilities. Neighbors exchange news. These conversations connect children to the broader life of the community. They learn not only practical information but also shared values. What matters? What is respected? What is expected? Knowledge travels quietly through these interactions, just as it has for generations. As darkness settles once more across the Nile Valley, lamps flicker softly inside homes. The stars emerge above the river. A cool breeze drifts through narrow streets. The sounds of work fade into silence. Families gather close. Children grow sleepy. The day has been long. The lessons have been many. Most of those lessons arrived quietly. Through observation. Through participation. Through routine. Through the steady rhythm of ordinary life. Outside, the Nile continues its endless journey beneath the moonlight. Patient. Reliable. Ever moving forward. And within the sleeping villages along its banks, childhood continues its own quiet journey, shaped day by family, community, responsibility, and the gentle passage of time beneath the ancient Egyptian sky. The Nile drifts through the night beneath a sky filled with stars. Its waters move quietly past fields that rest in darkness and villages that have grown still after another long day. The river has seen countless childhoods unfold along its banks. It has watched generations grow from infancy to old age. It has reflected the same moonlight upon the same waters for longer than anyone living could remember. Tonight, the valley feels peaceful. A soft breeze moves through the reeds. Palm trees sway gently against the night sky. The desert beyond the fertile land remains silent and motionless beneath the moon. Inside a small village home, a child sleeps deeply. The room is warm but comfortable. Family members rest nearby. A clay jar stands against the wall. A woven basket sits beside it. Simple possessions fill the home. Nothing extravagant. Nothing unnecessary. Most households along the Nile owned only what they truly needed. Children grew up surrounded by practicality. Objects were valued because they served a purpose. Tools mattered because they made work possible. Containers mattered because they stored food and water. Clothing mattered because it protected against sun and dust. This practical outlook shaped childhood in subtle ways. Children learned early that effort and resources were connected. Things did not simply appear. Someone made them. Someone repaired them. Someone maintained them. The connection between labor and daily life remained visible everywhere. As the stars slowly turn overhead, the hours of darkness pass. The village remains quiet. Occasionally a sleeping child shifts position. A parent turns over on a woven mat. The wind brushes softly against the walls of the home. Outside, the Nile continues flowing. Always moving. Always patient. And eventually, as it always does, dawn begins to arrive. A faint light appears in the east. The stars fade. The sky brightens. Birds awaken among the reeds. The valley prepares for another day. Inside the household, family members rise gradually. Morning comes gently. No loud signals announce it. The changing light is enough. The sounds of movement begin. The day starts once more. For many children, mornings are among the busiest parts of life. Everyone has something to do. Water must be gathered. Food must be prepared. Animals must be checked. Tools must be organized. Children learn these rhythms so thoroughly that eventually they require little instruction. The routines become automatic, familiar, comforting even. Knowing what comes next removes uncertainty. And in a world where many things remained uncertain, routine provided stability. A young child watches an older sister prepare part of the morning meal. The process seems ordinary. It has happened countless times before. Yet hidden inside the ordinary task is years of accumulated knowledge. Knowledge about ingredients. Knowledge about timing. Knowledge about preparation. The younger child does not understand all of it yet. But understanding is slowly growing. Each observation adds another piece. Each day contributes something. The ancient world often trusted this gradual accumulation. Children were not expected to understand everything immediately. Wisdom arrived slowly. Experience arrived slowly. Skill arrived slowly. And everyone understood that this was natural. As sunlight spreads across the village, people move toward their responsibilities. The roads fill with activity. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the air. Voices carry between homes. Animals stir within their enclosures. The village feels alive. Children move through this environment almost like apprentices to life itself. Everywhere they look, there are examples to follow. Examples of work. Examples of cooperation. Examples of patience. Examples of responsibility. Adults may not constantly explain what they are doing. They do not always need to. The example itself often teaches enough. Imagine a child watching a parent repair a damaged basket. The task requires concentration. The repair cannot be rushed. The parent works steadily, carefully, patiently. The child learns something valuable simply by watching. Problems are solved through effort. Mistakes are corrected through effort. Many lessons in ancient Egypt were taught this way. Indirectly, quietly, through daily experience. As the morning continues, children participate wherever they can. Some tasks are physically demanding. Others require attention and care. A child carrying water learns balance. A child helping sort grain learns patience. A child caring for a younger sibling learns responsibility. Every task contains more than one lesson. The practical work and the personal growth happen together. This blending of learning and living is one of the defining features of ancient childhood. The two are rarely separated. A child learns because they live. And they live while they learn. The sun climbs higher. The air grows warmer. Fields shimmer beneath the bright Egyptian sky. Workers continue their labor. Children remain close to the world of adults. This closeness often surprises modern observers. Ancient children witnessed much of adult life directly. They saw exhaustion after long work days. They saw worries about harvests. They saw concerns about illness. They saw discussions about resources and responsibilities. These realities were not hidden away. Children grew up understanding that life required effort. Yet they also witnessed resilience. They saw adults continue despite difficulties. They saw families support one another. They saw communities cooperate. These examples became powerful lessons in their own right. By midday, the heat settles heavily across the valley. The sun dominates the sky. The earth radiates warmth. People seek shade where they can find it. The pace of activity slows. Children gather beneath trees, near walls, beside areas protected from direct sunlight. For a little while, the village breathes more slowly. These moments often become opportunities for conversation. Stories emerge. Memories are shared. Advice is offered. A grandparent may recall events from decades earlier. A parent may explain why certain customs exist. A neighbor may share observations about the changing seasons. Children listen. Listening remains one of the most important skills of childhood. Before knowledge can be practiced, it must first be heard. Before wisdom can be understood, it must first be encountered. And many ancient societies relied heavily upon spoken knowledge. Information traveled from voice to voice, generation to generation. The child listening beneath a tree today may someday become the elder sharing stories with younger listeners. The cycle continues. As afternoon arrives, work resumes. The sounds of labor return. Tools strike wood. Grain is processed. Water is carried. Boats move along the river. Children continue participating in daily life. And through participation, they become increasingly capable. Capability was highly valued. Not because perfection was expected, but because capable people helped families thrive. A child who could be trusted with responsibilities became a valuable member of the household. Trust was earned gradually. A successful task led to another opportunity. A larger responsibility followed. Confidence grew. Competence grew. The process unfolded naturally. Very few dramatic moments marked the journey. Childhood simply flowed forward. Like the river itself. Steady and continuous. As the afternoon begins softening into evening, the sunlight changes. Golden tones spread across the landscape. The Nile reflects shimmering bands of light. Palm trees cast long shadows over dusty roads. The heat finally begins releasing its grip. Workers start returning home. Children accompany them. The atmosphere becomes calmer. The busiest part of the day is ending. Evening brings a different kind of learning. The learning of family life. The learning of community. Meals are prepared. Conversations begin. Neighbors exchange news. Children sit nearby, often listening more than speaking. These moments teach subtle lessons. How adults interact. How disagreements are handled. How generosity is shown. How respect is expressed. These social lessons are just as important as practical skills. Perhaps even more important. A community depends upon relationships. And childhood is partly the process of learning how to maintain those relationships. Darkness slowly settles across the Nile Valley. The first stars appear overhead. Lamps glow softly inside homes. The sounds of work disappear one by one. A cooler breeze drifts through the village. Children begin feeling the weight of sleep. The day has been long. The lessons have been many. Most of them arrived without announcement. Without formal instruction. Without anyone declaring that something important was happening. Yet important things were happening. Every observation mattered. Every conversation mattered. Every responsibility mattered. Outside, the Nile continues its endless journey beneath the stars. The river moves as it always has. Patient and steady. And within the quiet homes scattered along its banks, another generation of children drifts into sleep, carrying with them the countless small lessons of another ordinary day in the ancient world. The night settles softly across the Nile Valley. Above the river, countless stars shine with quiet brightness. Their reflections tremble gently upon the dark water. Along the banks, reeds whisper in the cool breeze. The fields that only hours before were full of movement now rest beneath the moonlight. The day has ended. The labor has ended. The voices have grown quiet. Only the river continues its endless journey. Inside the villages scattered along the Nile, families sleep close together. A child rests beside parents and siblings. The familiar warmth of shared space surrounds them. The walls of the home hold the heat gathered during the day. Outside, the desert cools beneath the stars. Inside, the household feels calm and secure. For many ancient children, this feeling of belonging was one of the most constant parts of life. The world beyond the village could feel large and uncertain. But the household was known. The household was familiar. It was the center of childhood. The place where daily life began and ended. The place where lessons were repeated. Where habits were formed. Where values quietly took root. As the night deepens, silence spreads across the valley. A dog sleeps beside a doorway. A fishing boat rocks gently near the riverbank. Palm leaves rustle softly overhead. The Nile glides onward beneath the moon. And while the village rests, childhood continues its slow work. Growth does not stop during sleep. The child who falls asleep tonight is slightly different from the child who woke yesterday morning. A little more experienced. A little more observant. A little more capable. The changes are small. Almost impossible to notice from one day to the next. Yet over years, those small changes become adulthood. That transformation was understood in ancient Egypt not as a sudden event, but as a gradual process. Children simply grew into greater responsibility, greater knowledge, greater trust. The river did not rush. Neither did childhood. Eventually, the darkest part of night begins to fade. A pale glow appears in the east. The stars slowly retreat. The air remains cool. For a brief moment, the valley feels suspended between two worlds. Night is ending. Day has not fully arrived. Everything is still. Then the first birds begin to sing. The Nile catches the earliest light. Morning returns. Within the village, movement begins. Doors open. Voices emerge. The familiar rhythm starts again. A child wakes and listens. Already the household is stirring. Someone prepares the morning fire. Someone gathers tools. Someone checks stored supplies. The routines are deeply familiar. The child knows what comes next. And this familiarity creates confidence. One of the quiet strengths of ancient childhood was predictability. Children often knew where they belonged. Knew what was expected. Knew what tomorrow would probably look like. The future was not entirely uncertain. The path toward adulthood could be seen all around them. Older siblings walked that path. Parents walked that path. Neighbors walked that path. Examples surrounded them. As sunlight spreads across the village, children begin another day of participation. Some accompany family members to fields. Others remain near the household. Some help care for younger children. Others assist with practical tasks. Every responsibility, no matter how small, carries meaning. A child trusted with a task learns something important. They learn that others depend upon them. That their actions matter. That they are becoming part of the larger life of the community. Responsibility and belonging often grow together. The more a child contributes, the more connected they feel to the household. This connection helps explain why childhood was often managed rather than intensely centered upon. Ancient families did not always view children as separate from the flow of ordinary life. Children were part of life. Part of the household. Part of the work. Part of the community. They learned by participating in the world around them rather than being sheltered from it. As morning advances, the village becomes busier. The smell of bread baking drifts through the air. The sound of grinding grain echoes from nearby homes. Workers move steadily toward fields and workshops. The roads fill with familiar activity. Children watch. Children help. Children learn. The process repeats day after day. A young boy may spend hours watching a craftsman shape wood. The work appears simple at first glance. Yet every movement contains experience. The craftsman understands how much pressure to apply, how to avoid mistakes, how to work efficiently. The boy notices only some of these details. But over time, he notices more. Observation slowly becomes understanding. Understanding slowly becomes skill. This patient progression shaped many childhoods throughout the ancient world. Knowledge was not downloaded instantly. It was accumulated. Layer by layer. Year by year. The sun climbs higher. The coolness of morning fades. Warm air settles across the valley. Fields shimmer beneath the bright sky. The Nile sparkles in the sunlight. Children continue their routines. And as they do, they learn another important lesson. The lesson of patience. Much of life in ancient Egypt required waiting. Farmers waited for crops. Fishermen waited for catches. Builders waited for projects to be completed. Families waited for seasons to change. Children grew up surrounded by processes that could not be rushed. Patience became part of everyday thinking. A seed needed time. A basket needed time. A child needed time. The ancient world often accepted this reality more naturally than many people might expect. By midday, heat blankets the landscape. Shade becomes precious. People seek shelter from the strongest sunlight. Children gather beneath trees or beside cool walls. The pace of life slows. Conversations become softer. The air feels heavy with warmth. During these quieter hours, children often hear stories from older generations. Not dramatic tales. Not stories designed to entertain alone. Stories about real people. Real experiences. Real lessons. An elder may describe a difficult harvest from many years ago. A parent may recall mistakes made during youth. A neighbor may share memories of seasonal floods. These stories carry practical wisdom. They help preserve knowledge. They help preserve identity. And they connect children to generations that came before them. A child begins to understand that life did not begin with them. Others have walked similar paths. Others have faced similar challenges. Others have learned similar lessons. This sense of continuity can be comforting. The child belongs to something larger than themselves. The afternoon arrives. Work resumes. The sounds of daily activity return. Tools scrape against wood. Water splashes into clay jars. Animals move through familiar spaces. Children continue observing and participating. Many of the lessons learned during childhood are not written anywhere. They exist in habits, in routines, in expectations. A child learns when to speak and when to listen. Learns how to greet others respectfully. Learns how to care for shared resources. Learns how to contribute to household life. These lessons shape character. And character, in many ways, was one of the most important products of childhood. Skills mattered. Knowledge mattered. But reliability mattered too. Kindness mattered. Patience mattered. Cooperation mattered. Ancient communities depended upon these qualities. As evening approaches, the sunlight softens once again. Long shadows stretch across the roads. The Nile reflects warm golden colors. Workers begin returning home. Children return with them. The atmosphere changes. The pressure of labor begins fading. The comfort of family life returns. Cooking fires appear throughout the village. The scent of bread and vegetables drifts through the air. Voices rise softly from homes and courtyards. Children help complete final chores before nightfall. Then gradually the pace slows. Meals are shared. Stories are exchanged. The day's experiences become memories. Darkness settles gently across the valley. The stars return. The river glimmers beneath moonlight. The village grows quiet. Children become sleepy. Their bodies carry the pleasant exhaustion of another full day. Another day of learning. Another day of growing. Another day of quietly moving toward adulthood. And outside, beneath the vast Egyptian sky, the Nile continues flowing through the darkness, carrying its timeless waters past homes where childhood is shaped not by grand moments of affection or celebration, but by steady guidance, shared labor, familiar routines, and the enduring presence of family and community. The Nile flows quietly beneath the stars. The night has grown deep. Along the riverbanks, the reeds sway gently in the cool breeze. The fields rest in darkness. The workshops are silent. The roads that carried so many footsteps throughout the day now lie empty beneath the moonlight. The villages sleep. Within their mud brick homes, families rest close together. The day's labor is finished. The bread has been baked. The tools have been stored. The voices have faded into silence. Only the river continues its patient journey through the night. And as we look back across the centuries, the lives of those ancient children begin to feel distant and close at the same time. Their world was different. Their routines were different. Their expectations were different. Yet their childhoods unfolded through many of the same quiet rhythms that have shaped human lives for thousands of years. They woke with the morning light. They learned by watching. They learned by helping. They listened to older voices. They slowly discovered their place within the world around them. Most of their days were not marked by great events. Most passed in ordinary ways. A walk to the river. A task completed. A story heard beside a cooking fire. A meal shared with family. A cool evening breeze after a hot afternoon. Small moments. Simple moments. The kind of moments that rarely appear in history books. And yet those moments were life itself. Night settles a little deeper over the Nile Valley. The stars shine quietly overhead. The moon casts a silver path across the water. Somewhere in the darkness, a boat rocks gently against its mooring. Somewhere beyond the fields, the desert waits in perfect stillness. The air feels calm, cool, peaceful. The children whose lives we have followed are asleep now. The farmers are asleep. The fishermen are asleep. The scribes, the builders, the merchants, and the servants are asleep. The village breathes softly beneath the ancient sky. And the river keeps flowing. Steady. Patient. Endless. As it has for countless generations. As it will long after every footprint in the dust has disappeared. So now, the lamps grow dim. The voices fade completely. The roads vanish into shadow. The Nile glides silently through the darkness. And beside its timeless waters, beneath a sky filled with stars, the ancient world slowly drifts into quiet sleep. The river flows on. The night grows still. And all is calm.